Welcome to Underwater CSI International Revealed with your hosts, Senior Investigators Rich Morin and Ed Myron.
Welcome to another episode of Underwater CSI International Revealed. I'm your host, Senior Investigator Rich Morin, and joining me as always is my co-host and business partner,
Senior Investigator Ed Myron.
What's going on today, buddy?
Hey, great to be back for another great episode.
Yeah, it's, we sit back and we reminisce, over the last 37 years working, doing underwater crime scene investigations, all the recoveries that we've done, all the great people we've met.
Yep.
A lot of sad situations we've been in over the years, a lot of big high profile cases we've worked together. But to be able to finally open up some of our case files and review or reveal, some of this information with our audience is great.
Yes.
We're having a good time.
Yeah, they get to hear some of the adventures that we've been on.
Sure, absolutely.
Sure.
For those of you that are just tuning in for the first time, we've been doing this for 37 years, over 700 cases we've worked on. In the 37 years, we've created 62 courses in underwater crime scene investigation. Also worked as specialist as far as reviewing accidents and fatalities for 25 years for organizations or certification agencies to try to make standards and policies and procedures, as safe as they can be.
Right.
So as far as a review committee, that's what I was trying to come up with, the review committee on that. But what's today's show about, Ed?
Well, today is what we called
Did someone
yell fire?
Fire.
So it's kind of unusual to hear somebody say, "Hey, there's a fire out there."
Yeah, on
So,
the water. Yeah.
on the water. So that's what we're going to be going over today. And basically, and initially, this call came in on the Labor Day weekend.
Oh yeah, I remember it. We got a lot of one finger salutes that weekend from hundreds and hundreds of people. We got called a lot of names.
So a busy, beautiful, I might point out, Labor Day weekend.
And how did the call come in? You remember that?
Yeah. So we get a call. The initial call comes in from a state agency saying, "Oh, we just have a boat recovery for you." So
that's near one of our beaches.
Yep. And
we need you to come up and get it out of there.
Yeah, as soon as possible.
Right.
Well,
it's an emergency, actually, I think is what they said. Yeah.
Yep. And that weekend, again, Labor Day weekend, it was unusual for you to give us the weekend off, but you were nice that weekend. So a lot of us were in different.
You mean you thought you were having the weekend off?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of us were in different locations, yourself included. And I took the initial phone call, then called you immediately, and then
staff was scattered all over.
Right. So we immediately headed back to the facility and started putting a team together.
Yeah, and a lot of people weren't available. They didn't have access to their phone or out on the boat, enjoying water skiing. I mean, staff was scattered all over the place.
Right.
Yep.
So we got back to the facility. Again, we are always prepared for all types of investigations. So again, we look at it as, well, this could be a potential crime scene.
Absolutely.
Could be potential insurance fraud.
Yeah, we're not looking at it as just a recovery.
Right.
We're looking at it as, like you said, a potential crime scene.
Right. It's not just for some other people. It's just a recovery. It's never that for us.
Yeah, and the other thing is they weren't quite sure the vessel itself, how big it was. And I'm not quite sure we realized how big it was.
Right.
Because they talked about a pleasure boat. It ended up being a 54-foot yacht.
Right. Which is not typically a pleasure boat.
Yeah.
Maybe your pleasure
something
boat.
We're just going to throw on a trailer and, yank out of the water.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So after getting all our gear together, the trailers, the boats, and so on, we had to make it was quite a quite a lengthy trip over to the
Yeah, and we had to wait
location.
for staff to arrive.
Right,
Yeah, we ruined a lot of people's weekend.
right, right. And once we arrived on scene,
Well, before we get to the scene, remember the ride over? We had lights and sirens.
right. Oh yeah,
Why am I always the last one there?
right. So I know some of you out there that are listening, you know how Rich drives the vehicles. In many cases, I think there's soccer moms that pass us in the vans and going, "Come on, follow me."
Skateboarders,
You know, we can. Yeah,
people with walkers.
yeah. I remember that one older gentleman was going past us in a walker, and we were going to the scene with lights and sirens. So
Yeah, I'm the only person that can have lights and sirens on that still gets passed by everybody.
yeah, yeah. The police are going. You can go faster.
Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah.
I just don't like speeding.
Yeah.
I mean, I do the speed limit and follow the rules, and yes, I'm that guy on the highway in the far right hand line doing lane rather doing 55 miles an hour. That's me.
That's
All
it.
right. Yep. So say hi when you're going by.
So we arrive on scene, and when we arrive, we realize this is a state campground on Labor Day weekend. The sign out front says, "We're full, no more reservations." So you could only imagine how people felt when,
This beach was 200 yards plus long,
right,
and we have to spoil everybody's weekend by closing it off.
right,
When we arrived on scene, we had a gelatinous, gooey mess. We had diesel fuel up and down the shoreline, contaminating the shoreline. The designated swim area was full of debris from the burned vessel. It was just a contaminated site,
right,
environmentally.
right,
So we know immediately that we have to activate an agency or a company rather that deals in environmental cleanup
right,
and call them.
right. So we have to get that agency involved,
Yeah, get them on their way
right? But they can't do anything until
we're-
we are done with our initial investigation and get the boat recovered and all that gelatinous substance and any other debris.
and potential evidence
Right.
out from underneath the water.
Right,
So this isn't something that's going to take a couple hours.
Right.
We have people that are ready to get on the beach. That's why they're there.
right,
They came here to spend time with their family and friends and picnic and barbecue
and swim.
and swim. And now we have the entire beach closed.
Correct.
Remember, as we were pulling in, we've got truck after truck and
Boat.
trailers, the big long trailers and everything. And people are screaming at us. We're not even sure what we're getting into yet.
Right. We
right?
haven't even seen.
All we
seen
got
the
was a
scene.
call that there was a down boat.
Right.
All right. And, didn't realize that the boat had burned to the water line or anything else, that it was 54 feet long, that all this debris was going to be in the water, that the
Right.
shoreline was polluted. We had no idea
Right.
why everybody's screaming at us,
Right. Exactly.
because the state already tried to close off the beach.
Right.
And even though they had a few employees up and down, people were still going onto the beach saying, you know what? You're not going to keep me out. I paid my day pass, or I'm
Right.
here to camp,
Right.
for the weekend, and we're going to use the beach.
Right.
And, that we can't let them in the water. One, they got to walk across diesel-soaked sand
Right.
to get into water where we have, potential debris. If they go into designated swim areas, somebody's going to get hurt. They're going to get cut.
Right. There's
You know?
fiberglass floating all over the beach, all in different depths of the water.
Yep.
Yep.
It was a mess.
It was a mess.
So let's talk a little bit more about the vessel. We found out later, right, from the insurance company that the payoff on it was $2.2 million.
Yeah.
So a big payoff.
And that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, big chunk of change. We'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get closer to our conclusion. If you want to take notes, try to figure out what happened, I'll be happy to, give you a bunch of clues and stuff as we're going along, and see if you can figure it out. It wasn't just us involved in this, though. We had to get the environmental hazardous waste cleanup team involved. So they're en route,
Right.
and eventually got there later that day, and they've got all their trucks and equipment and heavy equipment, because all this sand now has to be scooped up with a bucket loader, put into dump trucks, brought to a designated burn station. The sand has to be burned so it burns off the diesel fuel, and the sand gets recycled. And in the meantime, more dump truck loads of fresh sand has to come in to rebuild the beach.
Right, to replace all the sand that was just removed.
Yeah, you know what? It's not happening in a day.
Right.
All right.
And it's not happening on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be, sorry, folks, this beach is not going to be opening this weekend.
Right.
Yep. So which one of our staff members do we hate the most that we can send them over? Okay, you go tell the 1,000 people that are waiting to storm this beach.
Right.
And that's what it was about. We probably had about 1,000 people there.
Yeah. And then we had staff members lining the beach with our CSI caution tape.
Yeah, because we had to tape off the whole area.
Off the entire area.
We don't want anybody walking away with a piece of potential evidence.
Right. And we don't want anyone getting hurt.
Absolutely. Our number one priority.
Right. And then the state agency or the campground had some of their employees along that tape saying,
well, not at first they did.
Well, not at first. All right. I was giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Because they wanted us to get yelled at, the most,
first,
I guess. Yeah. But yeah, once they realized that the beach was going to be closed, that they started giving us some more help so that we could focus more on the crime scene. But what was happening out in the water also?
Right.
Well, we had to remember, before we even started anything, we had to boom off
the area
with containment booms that whole area out there because of the diesel fuel that was in the water.
Right.
These containment booms, what they do is they float on the surface and they'll soak up all of the contamination, whether it be gasoline or oil, et cetera.
Right.
It'll soak it up. And then what we do is we slowly bring it into a smaller area, kind of confine it, and then eventually soak up the rest of it. Well, we've got to start way out there. I mean, we've got a huge containment area.
Right.
And on the other side of that, we had to have one of our patrol boats out there until we could get other agencies to come in to help us out to keep
all the other boats and vessels away. Everybody, all the onlookers, right? They know that there was an accident. Now they see our trucks and trailers and all the activity on the beach. They see all these people yelling at all of us, and they're curious.
And nobody's on the beach.
Right, and no one's on the beach.
Right.
They're curious, so all their boats and kayakers and you name it, they were all there. So we're trying to keep them away.
And kayakers, remember that? Trying to come inside the containment booms.
Right, right.
Trying to get them, hey, it's all diesel fuel in there.
Yeah, yeah.
But
and we're trying to contain that as well, so to prevent more waves and more debris floating any farther. I mean, we've got debris 200 yards along this beach, so we're trying to reduce anything possible from moving any farther.
Yeah, and eventually we had enough other support from other agencies that came in with their patrol boats to keep the onlookers back.
Right.
So that we could do our job. All right, so once we got there, we want to do an interview like we always do. We want to try to find out as much information as possible before we actually just jump out in the water and yeehaw, here we are.
Right.
So we can't find the owner.
Right.
Right. It can't be located. But we do find out that the boat was out on a mooring. Right. Off of a marina.
Right.
That was just a little further down shore.
Right. So we located the marina after some initial interviews with some eyewitnesses. So we went down to the marina.
Right. And talking to the manager at the marina, we found out that this person had a rental slip there.
Right.
Okay. So why is his 54-foot yacht out on a mooring when he's paying for a slip space with water and power and everything else that's right there?
Right.
So it kind of raises a flag. And asking him, hey, do you have any idea where the owner is? No, we saw him earlier in the day when he brought the boat out there, but we haven't seen him since.
Right.
Okay. So then it was like, well, description of the car. Do you have, any idea? Yeah, and they did. But looking in the immediate area, couldn't find the car.
Right.
Tried calling the cell phone from the number that we got from the marina. No answer.
Right.
Went to voicemail. So it was kind of a mess. We also asked the marina operator, we said, have you noticed anything peculiar? Yeah, that's odd. Actually, you're right. We did say odd. Did you notice maybe removing electronic equipment because, it's an easy resell and get lots of money for it?
Right.
No, not really. I really didn't notice that. And anything else? Well, yeah, the boat's ready to come out in a week. The guy's going to pull it out and have some maintenance done on it, and eventually we're going to winterize it and store it for him. And it's like, oh, okay. And then I remember we asked also, when was the last time he got fuel?
Right.
Right. He got fuel yesterday. He did. How much fuel did he get? 200 gallons of diesel. So he got 200 gallons of diesel yesterday for a boat that he's going to pull out in a week for maintenance and storage.
Right. And this
What?
is Labor Day weekend.
Yeah. Why are you putting 200 gallons of diesel on it when your boat's sitting out on a mooring now,
Right.
not being used?
Right.
So all of these things start raising some concerns. Certainly we keep that to ourselves. We don't share it with the people we're interviewing at that because we don't want to scare the owner away. For one, we want
Right.
to have a chance to talk to the owner
Right.
and find out some stuff.
But it's all valuable information that we write down and we have available to us during our other interviews with the owner and with our team.
Right, because we certainly have some questions now.
Right.
For the owner. So now we can't locate the owner, and we go ahead and we begin our, well, before that, we also interviewing some of the eyewitnesses and stuff. Fire department showed up.
Right.
Fire department shows up, gets their fire trucks, as close to the water as they can without getting stuck in the sand, and their hoses, they can't get the distance they need to reach the boat.
Right.
So a passerby, a pleasure boat, tries to come out at the boat hard and a quick turn, making a large wake to swing the boat around closer to shore. But the problem was, talking with the fire department, as their water would hit the boat, the pressure from their water would just swing the boat back out to deeper water, swing it back out away from shoreline, and now they can't hit it again.
Right. So if you haven't figured out right now, the boat caught fire.
Yeah.
So the boat's sitting out on the mooring on fire.
Yeah.
The fire department.
Somebody yells fire.
Somebody yells fire.
Calls the fire department.
Fire department.
Sorry, I got a little ahead of you there.
No, I think you were too excited about it.
Yeah.
So the boat is on fire. The fire department is deployed there on scene, and like Rich said, a passerby is trying to force the boat in closer to shore, and the fire hoses are pushing the boat back out.
Yeah, so they're basically inactive. The vessel eventually burned to the water line.
Right.
All right. Now it's mostly a fiberglass vessel, but lots of stuff in it. Full galley. Lots of other stuff that's in it. And down it goes.
Right.
So here it is sitting on the bottom. We get the call to come recover a boat that's in front of our beach at the state park.
Right.
Okay, that's what we're planning on doing. But yeah, we have all the equipment that we need for a crime scene investigation.
And the boat. So as the boat's burning, right, it breaks free from the mooring.
Right. Yeah, it broke
and
free
drifts slightly down the
with
way,
the wind. Yeah,
right, with the wind, and ends up sinking in front of the
right in front of the beach.
Right in front of the beach.
Yeah, I think it was shallow water too. It was only like 22 feet or so.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was. 22 feet, I think.
Yeah,
is what it was of water. So not very deep,
right.
But not very far off the shore either. I mean,
right.
And there it is.
But again, a challenging recovery because of the condition of a burned boat, a 54-foot long burned boat that turned to a gelatinous, blacky, gooey fiberglass mess.
Yeah, and the wind direction was on a slight angle coming in towards shore, but on an angle going up the shoreline.
Right.
So all of this surface debris is all kind of getting scattered along this 200-plus yard beach area.
Right.
And when we arrived on scene, it was a mess.
Yeah.
So once we taped everything off, we come up with a plan after our initial interview. We can't find the owner. We realize that it was a severe fire, burned to the water line, et cetera. Now we've got to find the boat.
Right.
All right. So we head on out. We do our U-shaped patterns. Okay. So we're looking for the vessel. We come across it, and we weren't even sure we were looking at a boat at this point when we found it.
Right.
Because, like you said, it was just this long, mountainous pile of goo.
Right.
And what a mess. I mean, there was nothing on it whatsoever that we could determine was a boat other than we saw a galley refrigerator and stove and stuff like that sitting in it, and a few other a few other things that we could say, well, this belongs at a yacht.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh man, this thing is just toasted.
Right.
Um,
Even the if you remember what the engine area looked like,
oh yeah,
it was just a mess.
yeah. We could see the engines, but just just completely encapsulated with just goo.
Yeah.
Just all the melted fiberglass.
Right.
It was just, I mean, you got to remember the deck burned.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the gunnels burned. I mean, everything just came down on top of it. And it was difficult at first to determine that, hey, there's even an engine here.
Right.
But,
I remember when we were underwater, we were worried about whether or not this whole thing was going to come up in one piece or not.
absolutely.
If the engines were going to fall,
right out of the
fall
vessel.
out of the vessel. Right.
We couldn't even determine if there was any keel left of it.
Right.
Because the goo had just kind of like overcome the sides and was kind of dripping down. We couldn't even see a keel on the vessel at first.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just a mess. So now we have no rigging points.
Right.
There's nothing to tie on to. There's nothing to keep our bags from slipping out. We're also concerned because a lot of this stuff now is hardening,
Right.
and that it's going to cut through lines or damage our bags, et cetera.
Right.
And how many pounds of lift are we going to need in order to bring this thing up?
Right.
I mean, we didn't really lose any weight of the vessel, not a lot. It's
Right.
just in a melted format now.
Right.
So it's not like we can bring it up and start pumping it out and establish a little bit more buoyancy, et cetera.
Right.
This thing is going to be heavy from minute one until we get it onto a trailer. And what are we talking about, a trailer? We don't, how are we going to get this big, long ball of gelatinous mess onto any trailer?
Right. Right. It's not, we're not going to, this is not a typical boat recovery where somebody backs a boat trailer down onto a boat ramp.
Yeah. And we we float it over and set it down on top.
Right. And they go, okay, you can pull away. Sorry, that's not the case there.
Not this situation. So all these things we have to look at, and certainly not anything that we haven't done before. We've certainly dealt with a lot of boat fires over the years.
Right.
This one just kind of seemed a little bit special.
Yeah.
It had a lot more questions.
Yeah, and really with the size of the vessel.
I mean, the 54-footer. This was one of the bigger boats that we had brought up.
Right.
I mean, we've been on bigger potential crime scenes and some high-profile cases involving ships.
Right.
But this is, as far as bringing up a vessel, this is one of the larger ones,
Right.
that we've done. Mostly like ships and stuff like that. We're not equipped to that, nor do we have the experience, the training, or education to do that.
Right.
We have to rely on salvage companies.
Correct.
In order to do stuff like that.
Right.
So, in this case here, it's like, yes, we can certainly do this. We certainly have the equipment to do this. We just have to figure out how we're going to do it.
Right. And the best way to preserve any potential evidence
Absolutely.
that's still on board this burned out gelatinous structure.
Yeah. And in our trailers, one of the things that we carry are rolls of polypropylene line.
Right.
All right. 600-foot rolls, and we carry different thicknesses, going all the way up to 3/4 inch. 5/8 we have, 1/2 inch, et cetera. So we've got, varying rolls that we keep, in the trailer. So we come up with the idea of we're going to construct a harness system.
Right.
That we can slip underneath the vessel, put braided looped rigging points on for our airlift bags, and hopefully equalize the pressure from the lift across what's left of the hull itself to try to keep that boat from breaking apart on us.
Right.
Because otherwise, we're going to be bringing it back in pieces, and we want to try to retain as much of the original vessel as we possibly can.
Right.
For further investigation.
Right.
Right. Rather than trying to find bits and pieces all over the bottom.
Right.
So that's what we do. We spend hours on shore, and people think that we show up and boom, the vessel just pops up to the surface. We pull it out. It's a 20-minute job. We're out of there.
Exactly.
Right. So
beach is open. Let's go.
We've been
Let's
there
get in the
for
water.
hours already, and now it's going to take us hours to build this harness system.
Right.
Because we've got to cut all the line. And I don't know if you've ever braided polypropylene line before, but we have to braid it all together, and we have to also braid all the rigging loops. And man, your fingers get raw from dealing with that polypropylene. So we go ahead and we make the harness system, and it works flawless. We were able to slip it underneath, get our bags on it. obviously we've got a lot more lift toward the back where the stern area where the engines are.
Right.
And then, we can talk about how we're going to lift. We're in shallow water, 22 feet of water, I believe is what it was.
Right.
And so it's not like we have to bring it up on an angle. We have to worry about too much downward force. And a lot of times people also think, hey, the bags are going to hit the surface and the boat's going to pop up out of the water.
Right.
Well, a lot of times the bags are on the surface, but the vessel or whatever we're bringing up is still suspended underwater.
Right.
So what we did on the harness system is we put additional rigging loops further down on the harness system so we get further under the keel. But we can't reach that initially.
Right.
All right. So we have additional rigging loops that we use for the initial lift.
Right.
Once it's on the surface, we also have to run booms around the vessel to contain any contaminants coming out because we have to tow this.
Right.
Right. So we can't, be leaking diesel fuel, right, or other contaminants, as we're towing it.
Right.
So from that point, now what we do is we get additional lift bags, we put them at the lower rings, and we can actually lift it to where the vessel is starting to come up out of the water.
Right. And we were fortunate in this case that we, in towing the boat out, we could just tow it around the other side where the beach was. There was a boat ramp there, so probably another 100 yards right around we had the 200 yards, another 100 yards around to the boat.
Beyond that, yeah.
Yep, beyond that to the boat ramp.
Yep.
And unfortunately, due to the size of the boat,
and it was late at night by the time we were towing that around. It was late.
Right. We couldn't put it on a standard boat trailer.
No.
So what do we call in for that?
A flatbed, tractor trailer truck.
So we had to call in that flatbed.
It's the only thing that would contain it.
Right. So
this thing was huge.
Yeah. So we had to get that up on the flatbed and then go ahead and release the driver because now we have some other investigation to complete.
Yeah, well, I mean, once we got it secured on the trailer and they pulled it out,
right?
We still have to take all our rigging equipment off, and we had them pull it to a secure area that we predetermined and taped it all off, and had to set up a designated, evidence area,
right?
Where we could, lay evidence out and stuff. But it wasn't just us. We involved other agencies on it. We had state police. We had state fire inspector there.
Right.
But we also called in a insurance investigator. Right. That specialized in fire investigation. Because at this point, we didn't want the insurance company to issue this guy a big check. We were looking at a $2.2 million check.
Right.
And there were too many red flags that were raised.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So it wasn't just us. We had a lot of agencies working together. After this initial recovery of the boat, we weren't anywhere near done on the beach yet.
No. So we
weren't doing the investigation yet, continuing on.
Right.
We just had a secure area to park the vessel.
Right. We had to get it out of the water again. So to prevent any other kind of debris, again, there's waves going back and forth. There's wind. There's a slight current because of the wind. So we had to get the boat out then so that we could go ahead and now get into the goo, as you would say.
And why we were doing the recovery on the vessel, we had other staff members on shore,
right,
picking up the larger pieces and bagging and tagging all that stuff,
right,
and picking up any of the piles of goo and bagging and tagging everything had to be recovered,
right,
all right. And I think initially we had roughly 100 bags of stuff that they, I'm talking 55-gallon trash bags,
yeah,
that they had recovered. I think it was right around 100 because I know we bought 2 boxes of 50,
right,
and we ended up having to buy more eventually, but
right,
as we did more. So all that was being done in the process. It all went into the following day. The following morning, we were back on site, and we have to do something special now, a little bit different. Remember, the first thing we did is we searched with dive gear back and forth, and covered the swim area, designated swim area,
right,
to try to get anything that could potentially harm somebody in the future, a swimmer out there.
Right.
That all had to be cleaned out.
Right. We didn't want to have anyone getting hurt. Even the smallest of fiberglass shards can cut you.
Absolutely.
So we were basically going along the bottom with a fine-tooth comb, let's just say.
Yeah. And then one of the techniques that we have also is we have a 30-foot long length of chain link fence.
Yeah.
All right. It's weighted down on the ends. That gets brought out on the surface. It gets dropped down on the bottom. And then with a UTV, we pull it back into shore. Once it comes up on the shore, we have staff that starts going through every inch of that chain link fence to see if there's any potential evidence, all right, or anything left over from the boat that's
Right.
there, and it all gets bagged and tagged.
Right.
We've got 200 yards of beach, right?
200 yards.
And we've got, what was it, 6 foot wide or 8 foot wide
8
fence
foot wide
at
piece
a
of
time,
fence. Yeah.
right? So we first pull it in perpendicular to the beach, all right,
Right.
one after another. We just keep pulling it in for hours.
Right.
Then after we've done it perpendicular,
Right. Now we're going on an angle.
diagonal,
Yep.
45-degree angle.
Right.
Once we do the whole length of the beach one way, then
have
we
to
go
do it again
diagonal the other way.
Right.
Right, until we're pretty certain that we've got everything.
Right.
Now, prior to this chain link fence, we put divers in the water and we bring out all the big pieces.
Right.
So it was a mess. Once we're done with all this and we're done with the water part of it, then the environmental hazardous waste cleanup team can get in there and start scooping up the sand and everything else.
Right.
So they weren't even in there until late day 2
Right.
that they're there.
So
And-
now we have multiple trailers full of gelatinous, as you like to say it,
Goo, yeah.
and fiberglass and
Boat parts. and-
small parts, large parts, boat parts.
Now we're up around 150 bags of debris that we've collected.
Right. From-
Everything has to be gone through.
Right.
Everything.
Right. So again, people initially see this, they go, "Oh, okay, just go in there, pick up the boat, leave. Okay, let's everybody get back in the water." Well, that's our job is not that easy.
It was days and days and days of on your hands and knees with a flathead screwdriver sifting through
Right.
all of this goo and debris looking for potential evidence as far as what happened.
Right.
Now, in the meantime, we're able to find the owner.
Right.
Okay. Don't sound so enthusiastic about it. Okay.
I didn't like this guy.
So one of the questions that we ask him is, hey, you've had your boat here for years. You've never had it out of the boat slip to put anywhere else unless you were off on a trip somewhere.
Yeah.
Went down the canal system out to sea or whatever.
Right.
But here, you've got it out on the mooring.
Yeah,
Why was it out there?
On this busy Labor Day weekend,
Yeah.
you
And
have
remember, we weren't able to talk to him until Monday.
Right.
So this is the third day now he's had time to think of a story.
right.
Came up with a good one.
Yeah,
Yep.
you did.
All right. Came up with a good one. Believable. He said, well, the reason I put it out on the mooring is I've got some friends that are coming up from the city up and they need power and water because they're going to be staying on their boat. So I told them they can use my slip.
Yeah. It's funny we didn't see that boat anytime during
Absolutely.
during our
That
investigation.
slip was empty the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember going over to the marina going, here's his slip. And his boat was out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, where was his buddy and where was his boat?
Well, he had a good answer for that too. When we asked him about that, he was like, well, because of the, this catastrophe that occurred, they decided that, they weren't going to stop by because I was going to be busy, dealing with this.
Oh,
So that was the answer that he had.
that's true.
But yeah, you weren't real nice to the guy.
I
you
didn't
know?
like him.
Yeah. And remember, we weren't playing good guy, bad guy in this one.
No.
We were both supposed to be good guys. But,
I think I had to walk away a couple times.
yeah, you did.
Only because I don't know. There was just something about his attitude about this whole thing,
Well, I had to take your
And-
shovel away because I thought you were going to hit him in the back of the head with it.
and almost pointing the finger at us that why we couldn't have got this done sooner, why we couldn't have got it done faster, and why is it taking so long for me to get paid?
Why are we even investigating it? Why aren't we just allowing the insurance company to hand him that big check?
Right.
Yeah, he was angry.
Yeah, he was not
Yeah.
happy. Yeah.
Yep.
You handled it pretty well. I walked away a couple times.
Yeah, which is odd because usually it's the other way around.
Right. True.
I just want to throw punch the guy,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, only
know
one
if
of
you-
us needed to be angry.
I
on
don't know
this
if you
one.
can say that on the show. But
Yeah. But
it's too late now.
anyway, so then the thing was, well, where were you? Nobody could get in touch with you. Well, I frequent the bar, down the road.
Yeah.
And then going down and interviewing the people down there, they remembered him, not for as long as he said he was there,
Right.
but they did remember him, and they didn't know who he was.
Right.
Because normally he was at the marina at the bar there where he's paying big fees and stuff, and, part of the club and
Right.
everything else.
And where his boat slip is.
Yeah. And, where was your cell phone?
Right.
Oh, I left it in my car for 2.5 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny.
But so anyway, he seemed to have all kinds of answers. And, the one thing he had a hard time was, but he did come up with an answer, was, why did you put 200 gallons worth of diesel
Right.
on your vessel? Hey, we found out, right, through receipts and stuff, that you just put 200 gallons worth of diesel and your boat's ready to come out of the water in a week for maintenance and winterizing, et cetera, and storage.
Right.
And his response was, I wanted to take one more long trip with it down the canal system and, and do that.
Again, he was not happy about having to answer those questions.
Absolutely.
He was very reluctant to give us that information. And again, asked why all the questions.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Now, one good thing was having the state fire inspector and having the inspector who specialized in fires for the insurance company there, is they were able to pinpoint an area of where the fire started.
Right. So now,
because of hot points, et cetera.
Right. So now we've
acquired at this time.
Right. We've gone through all the bags. Right.
Yep.
And
I thought you were going to talk about something else.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Now we're on the vessel.
Yeah.
We're going through the vessel.
But we acquired the schematics.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. From the company itself, the manufacturer of it,
right.
of the vessel, and where everything was placed and how it looked and everything else.
Right.
And so once the fire investigators, right, state investigator, insurance investigator, determined that the fire occurred in this part of the vessel,
right,
we started to really focus on that part. And we spent a long time sifting through everything.
Right.
All right. Do you remember which part of the vessel it was?
Yeah, it's funny that in looking at the schematic and then looking at our drawing as we put parts and pieces together, that the fire started in the main head or cabin bathroom
of the master suite.
Of the master suite.
Yeah, the ensuite.
Yeah. It's funny.
So how does a fire start in the ensuite?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, as we were sifting through the area that the inspectors referred to us, right, we came across something that was really odd.
Right.
Okay. A sterno can.
Yeah.
Why? Why is, and it was underneath the gelatinous goo.
Right.
We came across an open sterno can in the head.
Right.
Right.
In the master's suite,
yeah, the ensuite
bathroom.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Why is a sterno can in the bathroom?
Right.
Right. We looked at the schematics, and directly above where the sterno can was the toilet paper holder.
Right.
Right. Huh. How easy is it to roll down some toilet paper?
Right.
Right. And, possibly have another roll of toilet paper sitting up on top.
Right.
As it burns up and catches the toilet paper because of the condensed. And we went ahead and spent a lot of time on our hands and knees, right, sifting through all the debris in that area. And we came across something that was very interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Underneath some of the gelatinous goo, we found a sterno can that had been opened and burned out.
Right. And why would a sterno can be located in a master bathroom or head in the master suite of this boat?
Absolutely. It's not like it's your heating source.
Right.
Right. The other thing is the location of the sterno can. Where was it located?
Right. So based on the information that was provided as far as the boat documents and in reviewing the schematics, the sterno can was located directly underneath the toilet paper holder.
Yeah.
Huh.
And that we do that all that from measurements. We find something
right.
that's stationary in it. We take the measurements based off the schematics and
right.
Where we found, we don't just pick up a sterno can and go, hey, look what I found.
right.
It stays there. We photograph, the sterno can from every different angle, but then we start taking measurements and we find out that, hey, this is right up against where the wall would have been, and right above it is the toilet paper holder.
Right.
Yeah.
And which seems, again, slightly unusual. I don't know. Maybe he was using a sterno can to warm his feet when he was in the bathroom. I'm
Yeah.
not
Now,
sure.
again, we can surmise. I mean, we can speculate. Was the sterno can on a stool, or was it elevated so it's just underneath? Lit. So eventually, it's going to ignite that roll of toilet paper.
Right.
Um, possibly another roll of toilet paper sitting up on top of it. It ignites. It falls off onto the floor. Towels packed all around the area. So it's going to start a fire.
Right.
All right. But we know that the fire started there.
Right. So we
Okay.
know from our investigation, we know from the other agencies, we know the fire started in this location.
Yeah. And from the hardware left over from the burnt door of the head, okay,
Right.
we know that the door was closed.
Correct.
Right. Because the one good thing is that the fiberglass, as it burns and turns to that goo, it kind of like secures everything where it was.
Right.
Yeah, kind of cements it in place.
Right.
So we know that the door was closed. So it gives the fire an opportunity to build up pretty good. All it needs now is more O2.
Right. So we know this, again, we are assuming or surmising that if this were to occur, it gives somebody plenty of time to exit the vessel, get back to shore, go to the local bar or watering hole, and has plenty of time away from the vessel, so it doesn't look like there's any foul play.
Yeah, with the window closed, with the the door closed on it, possibly a towel stuffed under the door itself. It's gonna burn slower.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
So I mean, eventually it burns through a wall, burns through a partition part of the door, et cetera. Gets more O2, starts to become a bigger and bigger flame,
Right.
and it just starts to spread throughout the yacht.
Right. So now we start to put these clues together. We start going back to the questions, how they were answered. We're going back to the gelatinous goo that we just went through. We now looking at the schematic and looking where the fire started. So again, all the red flags. So we continue our investigation.
And thank goodness that the portion of the main deck itself, all right, that was directly over the fire suppressant system survived.
Right. Was still somewhat intact.
Yeah. Not real well, but enough to where once we got done with our initial investigation, what we considered was on the deck and above all the equipment and all the bags that we had to put on the ground and separate out on tarps and go through everything. Now we're working below what would be the deck area itself, down into the the keel of the vessel.
Right. So don't give it away yet.
Okay.
Hold on. So hopefully our listeners, if you've listened to us before, we're giving you these clues so that you can kind of put together your own picture to see what you come up with. So you have all these clues, and now we're going to reveal our conclusion and see what you have.
Yeah, and we've got to remember that it's not about what we think and what we feel.
Right.
Okay? It's about what we can prove.
Correct.
So now we spend time below deck, right, the main deck, and we start sifting through all the debris that's down there, and it was thick. I think it took us 2 days to do that small area down there.
Right.
We start picking through, and then all of a sudden, bam, we find it.
The smoking gun.
The smoking, yeah, that's for sure. The smoking boat. All right, we find it. The fire suppressant system had been disabled.
Right. And not disabled because of the fire.
Right. It had been disabled prior to the fire.
Right.
Right. You needed tools in order to disable what we found.
Correct.
Okay. So the insurance investigator was also having his people look into it a little bit closer.
Right.
All right. Because we don't have that
type of authority.
Yeah, or
right.
ability to do that, And he starts researching, the financial status of the owner of the boat. Found out that he had recently lost a lot of money in the stock market,
right,
to where he was going belly up. and the $2.2 million was going to get him solvent again.
Right.
Right. So convenient, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, it was enough evidence to basically not pay him.
Right.
Okay. Where the insurance company decided that, no, we have too much evidence against you. We're not writing the check.
Right.
Normally, in a case this large, the insurance company would go ahead and pursue a lawsuit because of all the additional expenses, the environmental cleanup,
Right.
our services.
Right.
All right. We've got a full team on site for, it's a week now.
Right.
Actually, a little over a week.
Yeah.
And, so it's a pretty hefty bill.
And when you think about the state park, that so many people from the state park, afterwards we heard that so many people from the state park complained and wanted their money back or refunded or additional time for the next season.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot more involved with this whole case.
Right. So unfortunately, even though we had enough circumstantial evidence and concrete evidence to keep the insurance company from giving them the check, they didn't feel that they had enough evidence for prosecution.
Right.
All right. On the individual. So the insurance company still got stuck with a pretty large bill.
Right.
Reimbursing the state for lost revenues, having to pay our invoice, having to pay the environmental cleanup invoice, the burn center, more sand coming in, the truckers. I mean, it just goes on and on. So, it's unfortunate for them. And for the boat owner itself, pretty fortunate that he didn't end up going to jail over this.
Right. Right.
And still, didn't get his big check. Now he doesn't even have a boat.
Right.
And still in the same financial situation, actually worse. Yeah, than he was before.
Yep.
So anyway,
so
go ahead.
Okay. So, well, we hope that you guys put this information together. You guys kind of surmised what was going on, and hopefully you came up with the same answer we did. And we want you to go ahead, if you like the show today, go ahead and like that, and tell your friends, tell your fellow divers, tell your family, tell anybody who has any kind of listening device.
Yeah, because once again, our goal is to get enough viewers to where we start getting sponsorship, start able to bring in some income so we can start reenacting this and actually putting it on video for you.
Right. So you can see everything that's going on topside and especially what's going on underwater. And
for those of you that have joined us recently, didn't see our first show or the teaser and stuff like that, Ed and I turned down a couple of TV series offers recently over the last few years. And one of the main reasons is as we got closer to final contract time, some of the networks, they just had a tendency to go to a little bit greedy in our eyes. They wanted full ownership, full control over everything. And they wanted to kind of change the whole format of it. They wanted to make it like every other CSI show out there instead of really focusing on underwater. And also they wanted to focus strictly on homicides.
Right.
We have some of the insurance jobs that we've done that have been a lot more interesting than some of the homicides we've worked on. So it wasn't the direction that we wanted to go. They wanted to change our market audience. So we decided to back off. So we're trying to do it on our own now and trying to get the sponsorship and possibly start up a YouTube show that we can get going. So that's what we're looking for. So we really appreciate the support and the shares and the likes. And our next show, Ed, is going to be a good one.
What do we got coming up?
Okay. The next one is, could this be the end of a senior investigator?
Could this be the end? Whoa.
All right.
Senior, well,
let's just put out there, one of us.
Are we talking about your age again?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And so one of us, all right, it was either you or I, all right, our life was in jeopardy.
Yep.
I mean, very, very, very close to ending.
Yep.
So that'll be the next show.
Well, obviously, we're both here, so the ending came out pretty well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You walk a little funny now.
Well,
I'm not sure if that's from your Depends being full, though.
Yeah. Or just from carrying you all these years.
Yeah, that's it. Anyway,
well, thanks
for
again.
listening. Yeah, and I'm your host, Senior Investigator Rich Morin.
And I'm your co-host, Senior Investigator Ed Myron, and this is Underwater CSI International Revealed.
On behalf of everyone at Underwater CSI International, Revealed, this is Randy Overton. Thank you for tuning in. Underwater CSI International Revealed is for entertainment purposes only. The information revealed is not intended, nor is it a substitution for the proper training and education received from a qualified dive professional. Certain episodes are loosely based on and may be modified from actual cases. Some episodes are fictional based, featuring procedures that could possibly be used by underwater investigators. Resemblance to destinations, actual cases, or persons living or deceased is purely coincidental.